So, children, let us continue with the next para. The next day, he stayed with the prince. He told the prince stories about the strange lands that he knew. Dear little bird, said the prince, you are telling me about strange and wonderful things, but the suffering of men and women is stranger than anything. Fly over my city, little bird. Tell me what you see there. Now, children, the prince has become blind. He cannot see anything that is happening in his city. So, when in the previous para, we had learned that the bird has willingly decided to stay with him, and after staying with him, he tells the prince strange stories about strange lands that he knew, the lands or the stories of the lands where he had flown. So, but the prince is not interested in listening to such stories because he wants to know what is happening around in his city. He wants to know about the sufferings of the men and women in his city. So he asks the bird and says that fly over the city and tell me what you see there. So the swallow flew over the great city. And what does he see? He saw the poor people sitting at the gate. He flew into the dark streets and he saw the white faces of hungry children with sad eyes. Under a bridge, two little boys were lying close together to keep warm. We are so hungry, they said. You cannot lie there, shouted a guard. So these were the things that the bird saw. What did he see? When he flew over the great city, he saw that poor people were sitting at the gate. Then few people, he saw few children and into the dark streets, which were very hungry, and their faces had turned white, white pale. Why they were white? They had become pale, and their eyes were sad. And then he also saw that two little boys who were sitting very close to keep themselves warm because they had not enough uh, woolens or warm wear to keep themselves warm. But the guard over there was dragging them out. He was asking them not to lie there. And the children was saying that they were very, very hungry. Now let us see what happens in the next para. Then the swallow flew back and told the prince, I am covered with fine gold, said the prince. Take it off, piece by piece, and give it to my poor people. Now, what happens? That the swallow flies over the city, comes back, and tells the prince whatever he has seen. So, what action does the prince take? He says that I am covered with fine gold. Initially, I told you that the statue was covered with a sheet of fine gold. So, he says that take it off piece by piece and distribute it to these poor people. The swallow pulled off the gold until the happy prince looked grey and ugly. It means that he took out every piece of gold from the statue, uh, leaving him uh, uh, what you call leaving him bare. That is, it was made of a metal. So only the metal from which the statue was made, that the prince looked. That's why the prince looked grey and ugly, and the gold sheet which covered the entire statue was taken off and distributed among the poor. The swallow took the gold to the poor, and the children's faces became brighter. We have bread now, they cried. So the children became happy because they got some uh, piece of gold which they could sell and have some money, and then have some food for themselves. Then the snow came. Ice followed the snow and hung down from the roofs of the houses. Everyone wore thick coats. The little swallow became colder. He did not leave the prince because he loved him very much, but he was dying. Now, children, what happens here? That as it is, winter was approaching, severe winter was approaching. Finally, snow started falling in the city, and uh, finally, ice followed the snow. So it hung from the roofs of the houses, and people obviously had thick something to wear, like thick coats to protect themselves from the severe cold. But what about this little bird? He had nothing to protect himself from that cold. So the little swallow became colder. But he did not leave the prince because he loved him very much. And finally, a day came that when the swallow could not bear the cold and he was about to die. Let us see in the next para what happens. Goodbye, dear prince, he said. I am glad that you are going to Egypt, said the prince. You have stayed too long. Now, children, here the bird says goodbye because he is dying, but the prince thinks that the bird is leaving finally to Egypt. So he says that goodbye, finally you are going, I am glad that you are going to Egypt. You have stayed too long. What does the swallow say? I am not going to Egypt. I am going to the house of God. And immediately it fell down at his feet. So he died immediately. Then there was a strange sound inside the statue. Crack! The metal heart broke into two pieces. So the moment the bird died, and when he told that I am going to the house of God, and the moment the bird died, what happened? The metal heart that the statue had, it broke into two pieces because it could not bear the departure of the bird or parting with the bird. Let us see what happens in the next para. Early next morning, an important man in the city was walking below with two of his friends. He looked up at the statue. The happy prince does not look very bright, he said. The red stone has disappeared. His eyes are not there, and he is not golden. He looks like a beggar. Yes, he does, said the man's friends. And here is a dead swallow at his feet. Swallow at his feet, said the officer. We must make an order that birds cannot die here. Children, what happens the next morning? Maybe an authority or an important man uh, in the city was walking below. What did he notice? That this happy prince was not looking bright or beautiful because the red stone had disappeared. The other two, the blue jewels in his eyes had also disappeared, and the golden sheet that covered the statue was also not there. So he says that he looks like a beggar. And they also notice that a bird, the swallow, a dead swallow is lying at his feet. So, what does he order his men? That we must make an order that birds cannot die here. Now, children, is it possible to command the birds? But that was the case. So the people, they pulled down the statue of the happy prince and put it in the fire. A stream of bright metal ran out. Now, as it was made from metal, it was put into fire to melt it down. Okay, let us see what happens in the I think it's the last para now. "This is strange," said the workman. "This broken piece in the middle of the statue has stayed hard. We must throw it away." So they threw it away with the dead bird. Uh, what was that, children? Maybe it was the heart, something. So the strange men, the workmen, they found something strange, that is, uh, in the middle of the statue. There was something hard they got, and they threw it away with the dead bird. Now, up in the heaven, God said to his servants, "Bring me the two best things in the city." And what did they bring? They brought him the broken heart that the people had thrown away and the dead bird. Yes, you have brought the right things, God said. "This little swallow will sing forever in my garden, and the happy prince will stand in my city of gold." So, what happens at the end? That the statue was melted down by the people, and what remained hard, one thing that remained hard or did not melt, was the heart of the happy prince. So the workmen did not notice what it was, and they threw away, and they also threw away the dead bird which was lying near the statue. And what does God in heaven command or order his servants? He orders him to bring the two best things in the city. And what do they bring? They bring the broken heart and the dead bird. Why do you think that these were the only two good things, children? Because only these two things, the the heart, uh, as I told you earlier, that when we say that he has a heart of gold, we describe a person who is very, very generous. So, obviously, that heart which was very generous, which gave away everything it had. It gave away the two eyes, the blue jewels, it gave away the red jewel, it gave away the gold sheet, everything. It gave away everything to make the people happy. So, this was what this story, or the proverb that initially, do you remember the proverb that initially I said? What was that? The greatest sacrifice is that. What was that? The greatest sacrifice is that. Let me see. The greatest sacrifice is when you sacrifice your own happiness for the sake of someone else. So, this was the greatest sacrifice by the prince, and even by the bird, because it died, it sacrificed its life to help the prince. So, I hope, children, let me read the last two lines. "This little swallow will sing forever in my garden, and the happy prince will stand in my city of gold," by Oscar Wilde. Now, children, I hope you have understood the entire lesson. Read it again and again. The language was throughout very, very simple. We could hardly find out what you call uh, unacquainted words. So, read the lesson. We'll do with the English workshop in the next period. Thank you.